Welcome to Breaking Through the Contradictions. The goal here is to review some of the common contradictions we have lived and have had various conversations about and how it impacts various areas of a child's growth. We invited different parents, business owners, and friends to have a candid conversation on how some of the contradictions we live contribute and or creates larger barriers to supporting our youth. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, speakers, and participants in this context are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the organizers, hosts, or any affiliated individuals or organizations. We encourage open dialogue and diverse perspectives, but the individual viewpoints shared during this discussion are personal and should not be attributed to any collective entity involved.
I love it. I love it. I love how you claim it ahead of time so that nobody has to, you could just say what you got to say and then be like, I told you.
This is it. This is all I got. I would tell you, because you have to do this stuff because there's so often people like to charge others with just because you have a conversation. You can't do that.
I know.
I am a wild card.
Well, and like I said to you backstage earlier, I don't hesitate to say what I'm thinking. And that's one of the reasons that I have left public education, because I would tell my boss what I thought and I would be told, no, that's not what the budget says. And I was like, nope, that's not cool. Yeah. So I get it.
So this is good. So yay. Oh, so welcome, Kristin,
you got it yesterday on Tuesday, though. I was clapping for you.
Kristin, don't worry. That's all right. I think that's my thing with you two anyway. So I'm just going to stick with that. That's my stick.
I think it's our thing. I mean, it just makes sense. One of my best friends is Kristin also, but she's with an E. So we're 10 and 10. And so I said to Christine, maybe we need to be teen and 10.
See, there you go. I never have a friend that with my name, but I'll tell you what, the best introduction I've received to date is Emily to an Emily.
I
was like, well, this is going to be a little fun.
So, yeah.
This is cool. So, Kristin,
yes.
I am very thankful that you're here. It looks like maybe we might be able to join forces for a little while, right?
Yes, I'm excited. I'm very excited.
This is going to be amazing. All right. So today our conversation is SEL in the classrooms and a political motivation.
Ooh, it's a hot one. It's a hot one.
Okay,
and I brought it up.
Kristin, Christine would be here. She'd be like, now you know,
slinking down like, I don't know.
Like, hang on, I need some water. We're not going to have this conversation. We need some water.
Absolutely.
So, my gosh. Before we get started, one of the things we want to do is, because you come from the teaching side of things, I want you to explain to people what social emotional learning is, what it's meant to do, and all those things that are great.
Sure. Actually, the last 2 years I was in the school systems, I actually was a social emotional learning coordinator. And what that was at the time was a new position with the idea of we needed to support our students. And this was right before COVID hit. So it was pre-COVID, but supporting our students with those social emotional learning skills that they may or may not be getting outside of school. All those soft skills that we don't think of, like how to be self-aware or socially aware, how to have conflict resolution and problem solving skills. Time management is a big piece of social emotional learning. And then, of course, the last one is escaping me right at this moment. Relationship skills. Duh. That's like the most important one. How to build a relationship with someone. We don't teach kids how to do those things. And unfortunately, since computers and technology have increased, kids have been spending more and more time behind screens and not learning those soft skills that they typically would develop at the younger ages. So we're seeing kids come into school that don't know how to have a conversation and hear both sides of it, and, be able to make friends and make and keep friends, and, that kind of stuff that social emotional learning really encompasses, and teaching kids how to process what they're feeling and why they're feeling it. not how to feel. I want to clarify that. There's no how in that. It's what they're feeling and why they feel that way, to help them understand and process their own, specific needs. But it's not any kind of attempt to brainwash or make kids think a certain way, or attempt to make kids, believe a certain thing. It is purely to help kids understand how to understand themselves, really.
I think that's really good. I'm glad that you were. So I wanted to make sure that we really that we addressed that, to make sure that everybody understood where we were coming from before we got straight with it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's really important for everybody to understand that, because first of all, SEL, when did it become a
It's been around forever. I was a social skills teacher back in 2012, and it was SEL based teaching, but it was not mainstream until COVID. When COVID hit, all of a sudden SEL hit, and it was, oh my gosh, these kids are so far behind developmentally and socially, emotionally, and we've got to help them with their social emotional learning skills. And we jumped in to help with that. And then all of a sudden, politics got involved.
I got it.
COVID got involved. Politics got involved. And I think because people were home and paying attention, opinions were stated by different people of power on both sides of the spectrum. We have our red and our blue states, and red states tend to not think that SEL is important. It is disregarded. It is, you're trying to indoctrinate our students into believing certain things in certain ways. They're trying to relate it to CRT and turn it into a big, instead of it being about critical response training, that CRT, it's becoming, you're trying to do critical race theory. And no, it has nothing to do with that. It's teaching kids how to feel, how to think, and how to process all of that.
That is pretty cool. Now, okay, so you said some things, and inside those things, it started making me think. So what I will say is, hello, Nicole. Hi, Rocky.
Hello, ladies.
Joining us. So this is the thing. So Nicole says this is really important, right? Because she was discussing it. And I don't think that everybody truly understands what we are, what we're talking about when it comes to this, right? So you bring up a very good point. Social emotional learning came to be a thing when the pandemic, when we were having to deal with that. I believe a lot of that was because everybody was everybody's running around, my hair's on fire, here's the pandemic, right? But they forgot to look down to recognize that the little people below them was doing the same thing. Oh my gosh, my hair's on fire because my mom's hair's on fire, right?
Yeah.
And so they were sitting there trying to figure out we as the adults are sitting there trying to figure out our mess, trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that, right?
Yeah.
And then we never thought I don't think a lot of people thought, and it's not going to be general. It's just, I don't think that there was a lot of consideration for the children and how they were dealing with the situation. Yes. And that's why SEL became a big thing. And I also believe that's where the politics came into play, because we always like to play with buzzwords all the doggone time.
Yes.
I don't know how to say dadgummit because I'm not from that
dadgummit. I love it. Dadgummit. I get my water bottle.
I'm not Mike. So Mike, I can say that all day. I don't think anybody will ever come back and be like, I got to drink. But I think that's where the political side of things came into play, because it became a buzzword, buzz phrase that we were all using, and we're running around with now our hair on fire and our butt on fire, and we're trying to figure out how to solve it.
Exactly.
Politics has no place in this.
Well,
why they're using it, I don't understand.
It's there because I don't have a job because of it. Just to give you a little background, I chose to leave public education, because my position as an SEL coordinator was dissolved. They did away with everyone in the district that had a job like mine. There were 6 of us, and they threw the curriculum out, and it was after the Board of Ed changed over after elections. And it was all of a sudden, we don't need this curriculum anymore. Our kids don't need social emotional learning in school. We need to focus on math. And I don't hold my tongue. I'm not a quiet person. I knew that at some point my job would go away because it was Title I funded. But in the throes of a pandemic, not when I thought I would be told your job's not needed anymore. And so I very politely said in response, I was told, bottom line, my principal at the time, I will give him some street cred. He's from New Jersey, so he said it like it was. And he said, bottom line, deal is my boss is telling me that I need to hire a math coach because our math scores are so bad. And I said, well, with all due respect, bottom line, if you had math teachers that knew how to talk to kids, you wouldn't need a math coach. And he just looked at me and goes, point well taken, but I don't have a choice. And I was basically told by HR, you can go back into the classroom, and I'm dual certified in general and special education. You can go back in the classroom, but you have to take a special ed job. And, you're in behavior. You need to do our self-contained behavior class. I was like, no, you're not going to tell me what I'm teaching after 24 years of working in the school systems. And that's when I made the decision. Public education is broken. I need to get out. I need to figure out how to fix it from the outside. And that's why I'm here now trying to speak up and make people aware of things like, what is social emotional learning? They don't know. They hear a snippet on the news and they form an opinion. Shout out to Mark Reed and his podcast, Zen Summit. She did an episode just recently. If you want to be smart, have less opinions. And he's so right. Most of the people that are most vocal about things know the least about it. It's they heard something somewhere or someone told them to say, and they know nothing else about it. So, I just feel like a lot of people have that opinion and they don't even know what it means. We were teaching lessons like, how do you problem solve when you're upset? How do you self-regulate your emotions? How do you cope with that? That's stuff that I would have loved as a kid to have been taught. No one taught us how to do that. We teach reading and writing and math. We discipline for behavior. We don't teach behavior. We just expect. And here's the consequence. And if we can't say that we ever taught a kid how to do it, how do we expect them to know how? And that's something that always bothered me. And then teachers saying, it's not my job to teach them that. Well, it's not your job, but bottom line, they need to be taught it. So why don't you just step up and do it because you see it needs to be done?
So let's talk about that a little bit, because part of it, and this adds to the contradiction in itself. Mm-hmm. One is, again, I'm going to go back to what I originally say. Parent number one is home. Parent number two is school. The bonus parent is the community. Yes. Now, I'll tell you, for me, and I was just having this conversation with someone else earlier today. I remember having to get off. I was getting off the school bus, and I was riding a bus with the neighborhood kids, but I have always been, I wouldn't say mouthy, but it's not that. It's when people say things and I know it's not true, I'm like, pause, that ain't work. Right. That didn't work for me, right? So those are the things I would get in trouble for. Why don't you just be quiet? Why should I? That doesn't make sense. Don't be telling that lie to everybody.
I love it. Yes,
not gonna work out.
She does, Rocky.
I'm not going to do
always
real. I'm not doing it. Right. So when they would do things to me on a school bus, I would say out loud, instead of them learning how to work it out with me, they would run across the street, go up the steps, run inside. I don't know what nonsense they would tell their family. And then the family member would come outside, walk down the steps, and go over to my grandparents' house before I ever made it to the halfway point to home. And as I'm walking in the door, I'm like, well, which punishment I'm gonna go get today, right?
What is it gonna be?
The reason why I bring that up is because that is a community, right? The community kept us straight because our parents weren't always present. So now let's go back. Teachers, if you are spending, how much time did I tell you that the teachers are spending with their kids every single year? So if you're looking at 1,260 hours.
Unbelievable.
for wait a second, for 180 days. Let's just be very clear. 180 days, which is what? Not a whole lot of days.
Not even a whole year.
Not even a whole year. You're spending 1,260 hours with those children a day. You are responsible for helping them understand their feelings, how to deal with them, and what techniques to use to overcome them. And because you're going to have more of an experience with them in social environments than the parents will, why is it not your responsibility to teach this?
100%. Thank you. I do not understand teachers that just ignore stuff like that and just plow ahead with the instruction. And it's, well, I don't feel comfortable teaching them, you know, how to do that. I'm like, but are you a person? Do you have a relationship? All you have to do is talk to them about it. You know, hey, you can't do that. This is why. This is what you do instead. You know, it's not that hard. Just like any other teaching, you know, you pick up a lesson plan and, you know, you figure it out. I start every training I do with teachers with, you don't teach second grade. You teach the kids that walk in your room. Because that's something I hear all the time is there's that tunnel vision and the blinders go on of, no, I teach second grade. I can't do anything but teach second grade. No, you teach the 18 second grade children that were assigned to you. Those 18 kids might come in and be at all different reading levels and all different social emotional levels. You still have to meet them at their needs. You know, you can't just say, well, here's the second grade curriculum. I hope you get something out of this. You know, and that's where teaching's changed. It's not what it used to be in that sense. It wasn't, okay, you just, here's your second grade curriculum, go do what you do.
Yeah,
you know, there's so much more.
I just don't, so I get it, but I can see both sides of things. However, if you've seen that your child was setting someone's house on fire, would you stand there and say it's not my responsibility to put the house out?
Right.
So why are we not doing that?
Right. Well, and on the flip side, I had a parent once say to me, you know, I said, you know, was talking to her about how concerned I was about her daughter's reading level as a fifth grader. And she said, well, reading, that sounds like a school problem, not a mom problem. And I thought, well, that just defined what the problem was right there. Because, you know, obviously there was no emphasis or accountability put on any learning at home. And no wonder her child was jumping out windows and needing a behavior specialist involvement. You know, we do sometimes what we see, and, you know, we emulate what's around us.
Yes, exactly. Because that's one of the posts that I created. Was it last week? That says you teach what you tolerate, right?
Yes.
And it took me a long time to figure. When she would say that, I was like, wait, should I be offended? What is happening exactly? Right?
No, I loved that. Yes.
But then I started understanding it, and I got it right 100%. So when your kids do not want to read, when they do not enjoy education, they don't enjoy learning, things like that. Well, before we go ahead and lash out at everybody else we think should be the responsible party in that, we might want to go and take a look in the mirror and figure out what are we doing to participate in that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because I can't get down with it any other way. Because for my kids, so my children, they would break out. Like my one was consistently having meltdowns. I was like, I'm going to go to jail, y'all. Because somebody's calling the police on me because this kid was always having such a horrible time, right? But he wasn't. It was just, he wanted some cereal. It wasn't the right price. He lit up the store. All right, cool. But we just gonna move along. And he would cry about it. And I was like, okay, well, here's the deal. I understand because I too feel your pain. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to give in to whatever this is. But I'm not going to actually tell you I don't want to hear that noise and be quiet, right? It's an actual opportunity for us to learn how to help them overcome whatever they're feeling. So I would do it. I was like, you're upset? Oh, I'll tell you, I'll give you a better one. My kids, they used to do these crazy things. So we used to travel all the time. And I would say something to them. I would ask them a question and their response was, I said no. And right? And it was very aggressive and very nasty.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I would stop and I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I think the world just ended.
Oh my God, that's what I used to say, Tabitha, all the time.
I was like, oh my gosh.
I would do the same thing, throw my hands up. The world is ending. Oh my gosh.
And then I would stop and I would say, they look at me, everything just pauses. And then I say, try again.
Yeah.
And it would shock them out of wherever they were.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then they would try again. And when they came back at me again, Mom, I don't like that. Can you please not give that to me? I said, whew, I knew you had it in you.
Yes.
I knew it was there. So
Yes.
why is it that we ended up here? It doesn't matter. We all have to learn from that. So let's keep it moving.
And if you
reinforce them how to communicate.
Yep. That is so funny though. My very first year of teaching, I had a student who I loved her dearly. She had fetal alcohol syndrome and she was very dramatic. Everything was the end of the world. And so I would say, Bobby, I need you to sit down and do this math problem. Oh my gosh. And she would just throw herself around and thrash. I can't believe you're asking me to do this. And I'd be like, oh, the world's ending. And one day she said, if you say that to me one more time, I'm going to get you fired. And I was like, oh, really? She's like, yeah. And I was like, how are you going to do that? She's like, I'll just tell the principal. I swear on cue, the principal walked into that classroom and Bobby's face was like, how did I make that happen? Like she ran over, she goes, are you here to fire Miss Norai? And the principal was like, no. She's like, oh, okay. She just walked back over the table and sat down.
Look, you better than me. I'd been like this. Do it. Do it. Because, you have to participate. So here's the thing. All of this is social emotional learning.
Yep.
At the end of the day, they have to figure out how they're going to navigate the rest of their lives.
Yes.
How they're going to be able to participate in challenging situations. So with me, I meet with crazy. Because only one of us can act crazy at a time. And it's better me than them. Because I don't have time to be dealing with little people crazy. Because little people crazy get your butt in jail.
Well, and that's inconsolable crazy. Like you can't calm that down in any way. They don't get it. They don't understand. They can't connect it. Yeah. So yeah, I get that. I watched a parent and it reminded me of you just recently. The kid was eating ice cream and it fell off. And she was like, oh, well, that's what happens when we're not careful. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would have run back in and bought that kid another ice cream cone. She's like, he's got to learn somehow. Like, you don't always get what you want. And you dropped your cone. Sorry, buddy. That's what happens. And I about fell out because I was like, that is Tabitha through and through. I could see her being like, sorry, no ice cream for you.
I warned you. Look, I warned you. I don't know what else to tell you. I love, my little ones, I loved on them. And even, but I also told them once they hit a certain age that our relationship is going to change.
Yes.
And all of them was like, no, mommy, not for us. And no, not Aunt Tabby. No. Oh yes, it did. 12 and 13. That's when everything shifted.
I was gonna say, I can tell you the age too. Yep.
12 and 13 every time. And I was like, and then all of a sudden, so all the lovey-dovey stuff, and it's okay, and you're fine. And okay, so what do we learn from this? How are we going to be better next time? Things like that. So that's how we learn, right? But when they hit that 12 and 13, I was like, oh Lord, we have to determine whether or not we need a jumpsuit, because otherwise I'm gonna have to whoop. I'm gonna have to go to jail. So it's different.
Yes.
But honestly, the fact that the politics of SEL is playing a huge part, because one of the shows that we did, they actually, if you see, we all paused. Remember that one where they were like, social emotional learning is not necessary in a school. And I think the whole
I remember exactly what you're talking about. Because I was like, it needs to be everywhere.
I was like, what just happened? I'm confused. How did we get here?
Right.
And so you're saying that teachers needing mental health support, and the students who are helping them take the bridge,
right,
who also need mental health support. you're saying you're pulling that out of school because you don't want to be part of the conversation to help them understand how to handle their feelings.
Right.
So I don't get why that's not okay, because honestly, again, it's back to the metrics. If what we're seeing is telling us there is a problem to be solved, what are we doing to solve it?
Yeah.
These students have actually shown us consistently over the last, we'll say 4 years at least, that there is a social emotional problem because their anxiety is high. You got what it Phil tells me 90% of the student body is sleep deprived. They are not prepared for school, for colleges, or things like that. So all of these things are happening. And then when they don't get their way, they fall apart, cuss everybody out, want to shoot and kill everything. When they don't get the job they want, it's everybody else's fault and not theirs. Things like that.
They don't know how to take that responsibility.
They don't know how to take anything negative, and they believe in the sense of entitlement that exists with these kids is all tied to social emotional learning.
Yes. And they need to show empathy and caring about other people and general kindness. The last year I was in public schools, we had a live shooter situation and we were in lockdown, and I was traumatized, but not by the live shooter situation, but by the 6th graders that were in the room with me that were so apathetic and could have cared less. It was like, oh, well, there's a shooter out there. So what? I mean, no reaction. I would have been terrified. I was terrified as an adult. And their reaction, they didn't, of course, follow any of the protocols of being quiet and staying off their, devices and all that stuff and hiding under the tables. They're being loud. I'm like, okay, somebody's going to kick down the door and shoot us up, and it's going to be your fault because you're running your mouth. Well, I don't care.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And that was right in the beginning of coming back to school from COVID full time. When we were like full time, full steam ahead, everybody's back. 6th day of school, this all goes down. And we just moved on the next day, business as usual. Never discussed it as a class, never discussed it as a school. Obviously, I discussed it with the students I worked with and the groups I worked with. But I would have expected some semblance of, hey, let's process what just happened here. We didn't do that. So we didn't teach kids how to process anything, and we let them think that's just a normal day. Let's go back to class now. And that was, I think, the beginning of the end for me. That was my last year in the schools. And when I was like, what is going on here?
So it's not just me. And so I think that I've been having various conversations. People, I do know a couple people feel as though what I talk about is triggering. It is meant to be. Because this is my saying, and I'm going to put it on a shirt. I'm going to put it on a t-shirt, and I'm going to wear it. When I am always too much when you need change.
Yes.
It's just as simple.
That's the only way you get it.
There's no other way to get it. So if we don't have the conversations, we never know what we're supposed to do to fix it and who else is having that problem. And so what I hear you saying, so someone else had actually asked me about this a little bit, and they said, they were like, we don't think you got to the root cause of whatever's going on here. And I was like, okay, cool, no problem. I get what you're saying, but here's the thing about it. For my company, when you lose a child, when a parent loses a child due to a mishap from school, we're going to say in this instance, that child dies, because we have had a number of children who have died. Okay. In that instance, this child dies. The parents every single day get to be reminded that their child is no longer here with them. Okay. Yep. But schools do this thing where that child dies. Tomorrow is business as usual.
Yeah.
And then you get replacement children that will help fade out the name and situation that happened with that child.
Yes.
And the fact that you said, even with this situation, an active shooter, that is telling you that SEL is needed, because that active shooter did not have coping skills and technique to handle whatever was going on here, that person felt like it was appropriate and acceptable to go into a school and become an active shooter.
And it continued for 4.5 hours because they couldn't find the person. So it not just, it was a high school student and they evacuated to our building, which was stupid because the shooter probably was among the evacuees who came to our building, and we were the elementary school. And so now the high school is in the gym trying to reunite families and kids with their parents and this and that. And we're in lockdown because, again, they don't know if the shooter's in the gym with everybody else. I'm like, who thought that plan through? And it's just, there were so many things that I started to feel like all I was really doing as a public educator was triaging. I was a triage nurse that went in each day, slapped Band-Aids on whatever problems came up that day. And then I went home, and the next day I got up and I went slap Band-Aids back on whatever needed to come up again. And it was like, there is nobody's going to be able to change what this is like if they're just doing this from the inside. Nobody is going to be able to change it. Teachers can't change it. Administrators aren't going to change it. Superintendents probably can't even. I mean, this is policymakers. This is like, we need to look at systematically what is wrong, because this is not just, oh, you're in North Carolina, so the school's here. Oh, you're in Texas. No, it's everywhere. Every state, every district, every place I've ever worked, this is an issue. It's not, geographically, choosing where to go and being a problem. Kids everywhere are struggling desperately. And we're not teaching them those coping skills. We're just expecting them to figure it out. And now we have a lot of people stepping back and saying, wait a minute, SEL is great and adults need it too. We need to have all of this too. So a lot of companies are starting to adopt SEL policies. One of the things, the project I worked on not too long ago was writing SEL objectives and looking at, how do we do this? When we're in 12th grade, we still need to be talking about conflict resolution and self-regulation, but each year it builds, and you're always that growth mindset of you're always going to be improving if you continue to have that open mind and learn, and with SEL, I think it's nope, this is the way it is, and we're just going to punish. And if you don't do it this way, we'll tell you you're wrong.
But see, now you bring up another point. So you're now putting SEL into the workplace now as now their responsibility if they want to maintain employees.
Right.
So instead of it being taught, so here's the thing, if anybody's paying attention and listening with this, okay, here's a correlation I will draw. For every time the school does not do what they have been assigned to do for any student, you will then have to deal with that in adulthood in your employment with that same curriculum you have to then feed. It doesn't matter whether or not you agree or disagree. If it is not taught in one place, it will be taught somewhere else, and it will be the responsibility of someone else. So again, for all those people who keep saying you don't have a child in the school district, you don't have any skin in this game, you don't have this is the skin you have in your game. Because if those children don't learn SEL, that means you're going to have to teach them as adults. And guess who doesn't learn as easily and will adopt very quickly? Adults.
Absolutely.
Because we believe that we know all things and no one can tell us anything. And that is part of SEL.
Absolutely, 100%. I think the funniest part about that is teachers are the ones needing SEL the most right now with work-life balance and help and support with mental health, because they are wearing so many hats. I know, as a teacher, I was not just a teacher. I mean, I taught every subject and multiple grades when I did special education, but I was also, how do you zip your jacket up? Hey, my uncle was shot last night. I need to process that. There's no counselor in the building today, so I'm going to process that with the student. Oh, you don't have a jacket? Let me go ahead and get you a jacket and let me help you. And now I'm a social worker too, because I'm getting you basic supplies for your home. And it's just constantly building over and over and over. And every year there's something else that the teachers are being asked to do. And I get it. Teachers are tired. However, somebody's got to do it. I mean,
so what can we do? Because we always want to leave with a solution of some kind. So what can we do as parents, as aunties and uncles, and just community members? What can we do to help support everyone with the teaching and helping the students with their SEL?
So because SEL is so tainted now in terms of people feeling like it's such a political issue, take that language away and say, you're just really teaching kids how to be good people. So if you see a kid that's not being a good person, teach them what they should do. And you can't say to a child anymore, would you act like that at home? Because 9 times out of 10, they go, yes, I would. Or yes, I'm allowed to say that at home, or whatever it is. I've had to learn to say, is that appropriate for school? And then talk about, how you code switch and how when you're at home, you're allowed to do some things that you don't do at school. And you talk to friends differently than you talk to your teachers. And I'm not your bruh. And don't tell me to F off and go to where and, shove something up my, what, and all that stuff that I heard every day, all day. And what do? You're helpless in that situation because you can't send a kid home for cursing because nobody would be there ever. Oh. But what do? Except model and correct. And, I ignore any of that and then correct the good stuff. I joke, and I hope that you will appreciate this. I had a student who behavioral disability, who one morning was really struggling and self-regulation was not working. And I was having a conversation with his teacher as his behavior specialist, and the announcements were on, and this child never cared about the announcements. So let's just make that straight up front. He sits up and we're talking and he starts screaming at us, would you two please shut the F up? And so my response at 8:00 in the morning on a Monday was, thank you for saying please. We'll take our conversation in the hall. And I just took the teacher and we walked away. And she said, why did you do that? I said, because if I chose to engage in that, I was going to be told F you all day long. But instead, I got a positive in there, and now I can correct him the next time he tells me to F off.
So does that work is a good question.
It does.
Okay.
It really does, because you're correcting the positive in that statement, and he's not getting a reaction to the negative. He meant to shock. That shock value was supposed to be there. Same student, was walking down the hall cursing one day, and a colleague of mine said, hey, watch your profanity. And he turned and said, you watch your effing profanity. So, I mean, this is a child that you raised it. He's going to raise it further and just keep it going. Yeah. And so you learn to pick your battles and then model what you should do. Hey, right. Instead of turning around and yelling at me, what do you think you could have done differently? And then it's a totally different conversation. But in the heat of that situation, all it would do is escalate. So why do that?
I got you.
It's not that I'm going to let him get away with it. I'm just not going to escalate it. I'm going to let him chill out. And then I'm going to come back and be like, what you did was inappropriate. You may not speak to us that way. What do you think you need to do to make it up? And we'd be writing a letter to the teacher to apologize for the way he spoke and all of that stuff. But you've got to teach him how to do it.
Yeah. So that's very, very key. So we got to be, so as parents and as community supporters of all children, we do need to be mindful of what example we are setting for them to emulate. So believe it or not, and I know a lot of people, they question it. Our kids, our first teacher is our parents, but the people that are around us, that we get to teach them too. Because there are times in which I didn't like the way my father behaved and things like that. But so I didn't engage with that. And when I would see it elsewhere, I would navigate around it because it wasn't something I wanted to do.
Right.
But I also learned that other people, I was able to start to sort people out that way. But the ones who I really liked how they moved and how they engaged and things like that, that was something I was able to find and emulate. So yes. That's the thing I feel like is the most important part of it. So yeah. I do believe that to be correct. So we do have to emulate the behaviors we want to see shining back or mirroring back at us from our little people, because
Yep.
that is the thing that matters the most. And I think that's really impactful. So,
and I think that that's the biggest issue right now is a lot of times it was very combative with parents. You'd call home to talk about a behavior issue and okay. Well, I'll have to hear what my son's version is when he gets home.
Yeah, not my child.
Right. I mean, I'm dealing with that as an advocate, trying to explain to this mother, your child's not always right. The teacher, your teacher might not always be right either. They're somewhere in the middle because, you just got the adult is the adult in the situation.
Right.
You've got to give that some weight.
So the one thing for that I would say, I would encourage or recommend is that when you see that, hello, doc. When you see that, I honestly just say, let me ask you a question. Is it possible that what the teacher is saying is correct? That's one. And then secondly, can you please share with me what you were doing at that age?
Right. Yeah.
Because when we start to remember what we were like at that age, we're less likely to continue to lash out at people. Because I'm going to tell you, I almost got expelled twice in high school for the same identical action, smacking somebody who was the teacher. So, right. But the point is that so if when it was my son who was brought up on some of these things, I was like, show me the tape, because I understood what was happening, but I also understood that he was probably doing something he didn't have any business doing. So I wasn't so ready to jump on his side at that point. I was like, let's evaluate this, because there actually might be some validity to it. Yeah. And I might be participating in the bad behavior of that child. So,
well, and I'll tell you, as somebody that was the interventionist, 9 times out of 10, the adult was the problem when I would go to de-escalate something. There'd be a kid and an adult in an argument, and the adult would be the one fueling the fire. And I'd be like, all right, stop. Like, and they always just would think, oh, you're just letting them get away with it. No, we're putting it on hold and we're de-escalating and we're calming down so we can process and talk about this rationally instead of screaming at each other back and forth. 8th grader yelling at a math teacher, you know what, you're a effing you know what, and her saying, well, it takes one to know one. What teacher says that? Come on.
First of all, what adult is arguing with a child?
Right?
I had to turn around one day.
Like, and I mean, it took that child that I was working with her on self-control, and it took everything in her to not punch that teacher. And I rewarded her when we got back for holding her tongue and not saying anything or doing anything physical, because she never should have been spoken to that way by that adult.
No. And that's not,
forget their kids. Yeah, we forget even an 18-year-old is a kid. 25-year-old still does not have a done brain. We're still teaching.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. So good. We get to end on a good note. So here we are. Kristin.
Yes.
So look, I'm so used to looking over and seeing Christine.
I know. I get it. It's hard shoes to fill.
Yeah, but it's okay, because you're going to come and join us again.
Yes.
So Kristin, this has been great to talk about. So again, our conversation was definitely around, I lost it. That's a good. SEL in the classrooms and the political motivation. So I just want to share with everybody who came and hung out with us for a little while. Thank you for spending your time with us. And then at the same time, understanding that we are responsible for what is happening with our children. And we get to make choices, even though we think we don't have any. So any event that you think you don't have a choice or an option, go ahead, reach out to one of us and we'll tell you how to get around it. And Kristin is actually definitely an advocate. I'm an advocate as well, but she actually has the skill set and the background that will help support you. With over 24 years of educational experience, she has the ability to help you get to where you're trying to get to with your students.
And I'm already actively working in schools as an advocate. It's amazing and scary to me how powerful that position is. I hate that it is this way, but I had a parent that couldn't get a meeting. I wrote a letter. We were all at the table 6 days later with district representatives. And it shouldn't take an advocate writing a letter to bring people together for what's best for kids.
Exactly. So until then, till next time, words are power.
Yes.
Remember to use them wisely.
Thank you for your time today. We appreciate the support and look forward to you visiting us again next week. Same time, same place. Until then, words are power. Please remember to use them wisely. If you have an interest in discussing a contradiction or would like to be on our live show, please let us know and send us a direct message.